let's talk about the focus settings on your camera. This is very, very important. And just as a reminder, as I said in the beginning of this class, as you move up in the digital SLR line, your focusing is a lot faster than it is at the lower end. But even the lower end, the entry-level digital SLRs, give you great autofocusing. So, check out these pictures. I took both of these pictures in Mongolia, by the way, which was an incredible experience. In the picture on the right, nothing's moving. The soldiers are just standing still. Here I use the one-shot setting. What happens is you take your camera, you press the shutter release button down halfway, it locks in the focus, and then you can shoot. So basically, if the subject's not moving, you can't take an out-of-focus picture. But look at the picture on the right. These soldiers were charging at me at full speed. I mean, this was an incredible experience. I wanted to get a tack sharp shot. So I set my camera on AI servo. And what that mode does, it actually tracks the motion right up until the time of exposure, so you get a very clear shot. On some cameras, it might be called continuous focus. It's called different things on different cameras. On mine, it's called AI servo. So these are the two main focus modes that I use. One shot when the subject's not moving, locks in the focus, so you can't take an out-of-focus picture, and AI servo, which actually tracks the subject right up until the moment of exposure. And my camera also has something called AI focus. AI, by the way, stands for Artificial Intelligence Focus. What that means is that if a subject's not moving and then it starts to move, the camera changes from one shot to AI servo. So those are the basic focus modes with your camera. This is amazing. You can focus faster with the camera like this than ever before possible. These cameras focus faster than humanly possible. And by the way, you know the old saying, cameras don't take pictures, people do. So even though you have all this super sophisticated focusing stuff in your camera, you still have to concentrate on good composition. So here's another example of that AI servo. I was in Montana teaching a workshop. This horse and rider coming at me at full speed. I got a tack sharp shot. Same thing here. This rider was going actually past me and then came toward me. I got a sharp shot because I was using that AI servo focus. And by the way, you may go out and try this, set your camera on AI servo focus or continuous focus, and you may come back with a blurry shot. You may say, what happened? I followed Rick's advice. Well, here's the deal. You still have to pay attention to the f-stop and the shutter speed to get the perfect shot. Look at this picture of the horse and the rider. I used the shutter speed of a 500th of a second to blur the action, and I used an f-stop of f8, so I had enough depth of field to get the rider and the horse in focus. Same thing here. This beautiful seagull, I think is a beautiful bird, was flying by me at top speed. I used a 500th of a second shutter speed to freeze the action, and I stopped down again to f8 to give me enough depth of field. And by the way, all lenses are sharpest at f8. That doesn't mean you're going to get more in focus at f8 than f11 or 16. It just means that they're sharpest. So when I'm taking pictures, a lot of times, especially of distant subjects with the telephoto lens, I'm setting the f-stop at f8. So your menu may look like this. You have one shot, you have AI focus, and you have AI servo. It's very important to choose the right focus mode for the right exposure situation. Now, there's something else that you can do with these cameras. You can set the focus points. Now, my camera actually has 45 autofocus points. You don't see all of them in the viewfinder. You can see 9. This is amazing to me that you can see these 9 focus points and you could set the focus anywhere. So say you're going to take a picture of me here in this studio and you wanted me in focus, sharp focus, and the background a little out of focus. You could set the focus point right on me. Say there was someone else standing here. And if you just had the focus point set in the center, it might focus behind us and we would be out of focus. So this is something else that you want to do when you're checking your camera settings. Remember, you got to check your settings a lot. You want to check that focus point because in bright light, sometimes it's not that easy to see the focus point because you're having so much fun and you might forget where you set that focus point. But set your focus carefully and you get a tack sharp shot. Check out this picture. I was in Galapagos. You can see that this bird is off center. So what I did, and this is indicated by that little yellow box there, I locked the focus in on the bird. And this is how the focus lock works. Hold your camera up, you press the shutter release button down halfway. If the center focus point is set, lock the focus in and reposition and shoot. That's because that locks in the focus, so no matter where you move it, the focus is not going to change. So that's one way to get an off-center subject in focus. Well, here's another. I was in Bhutan, and I wanted to get this monk in sharp focus. So what I did is I set the focus point. Remember I said that you could change the focus points? I set the focus point to the left, so that locked in the focus on the subject. So here's another example of focus lock if you don't want to use one of those focus points. I was in Montana teaching this workshop. I wanted the cowboy in the foreground in sharp focus. So I locked the focus in right on the cowboy, heard the beep on my camera, and I repositioned and I took the shot. If I didn't do that and just had the focus point set in the center, maybe the cowboy in the foreground would have been out of focus. So message is this: just because you have an autofocus camera, it doesn't mean that the camera knows where to focus. Okay, I want to ask you a question. If you're looking at a landscape, if you're looking at a seascape, if you're looking at a scenic, is everything in the scene in focus? Well, it is, if you have 20/20 vision and if you have glasses that are correct for your eyesight. The point is, when you're photographing a landscape, a seascape, or a scenic, you want everything in the scene in focus. Now, as I said before, just because you have an autofocus camera, it doesn't mean that the camera knows where to focus. So here's how to get everything in the scene in focus, as long as there's not a foreground element really close to the scene. You want to hold your camera, you want to lock the focus 1/3 into the scene. So have the center point selected, look through the viewfinder, lock the focus 1/3 into the scene, reposition, and if you're shooting with the wide-angle lens, 16, 17 millimeter, 20 millimeter, 24 millimeter lens, and a small f-stop, f8, f11, f16, you're going to get everything in the scene in focus, because what that does, locking the focus 1/3 into the scene, it sets the lens up for the hyperfocal distance, which gives you everything in the scene in focus. Now, this usually works, but if you have as I said, if you have a foreground element relatively close to the camera, that might be a little bit out of focus. So just remember, as I said a few times, just because you have an autofocus camera, it doesn't mean that the camera knows where to focus. So those are the autofocus modes. What the heck do you think a camera has manual focus? Well, in low light, in low contrast situations, that's when you're going to need manual focus, because the way these cameras focus is by focusing on contrast. Check out this picture. I took this on a mountaintop in Montana. Sure, there's some contrast in the foreground, but I wanted the mountains in the background in focus, so I had to use manual focus. So in low light situations, that's when you want to use manual focus. Well,